So yeah, so let's go through and actually talk a little bit about automation and AI and really how this comes together. So we'll start with the way that UiPath really has an objective to go in and help companies unlock their unlimited potential, really by becoming a fully automated enterprise. And now for our particular session today, what we'll do is we'll really focus on this piece here around unleashing AI across every facet of work. Now, at UiPath, we really believe in the power of AI to transform. And so we've really tried to build AI into every part of the platform. I think even earlier today, you heard Param talk about a little bit about one of those around the discovery pillar with things like, task mining and using AI to go and discover some good automatable processes. Really this starts to go across multiple different areas. And the idea here is that, software robots can reason over data. And now once you start using artificial intelligence to help make those decisions, you really start to unlock new possibilities that can transform what you can do with RPA. And this allows you to reach further levels of productivity than you could do with traditional RPA alone. So let's go a little bit more into how we think about AI layering into each of the different levels of the UiPath platform. So first, a little history, right? If we think about traditional RPA really here, is centered around trying to mimic the human actions and how we interact with various digital systems, and allows us to then automate tedious and repetitive tasks. And these are ones that you heard about earlier. I think Jim talked about that, Tom talked about that as well, and Param certainly talked about that in terms of the overall vision for the platform. Now, you can imagine typical tasks being things like keying tasks or screen form integration, application, data integration, data transformation, anything like that, especially around structured data, right? The focus here is really around the execution of the task itself. Now, as you start taking this a little bit further though, let's look at what you can do once you start layering AI into this picture. Now, once you start adding AI to RPA, you can start to automate processes and tasks that are much more knowledge intensive. So just as an example, think about how you can take something like natural language processing and start to use that to go and look for data inside unstructured data forms. For example, documents or contracts or emails, anything like that, right? Or imagine how you can start to take more predictive responses to scenarios where the answer may not be binary. You may have a continuum and it may be probabilistic in terms of what the decision might be. For example, think about a lone default scenario or something that's very high variability. Like identifying the intent of a customer query, right? Anything like this can be a scenario where you need to start to use AI, and the use of AI technology really empowers you to be able to do more with your RPA process. So, when we think about AI, it really helps with the processes that encompass uncertainty, high variability, or using unstructured data rather than very structured data that traditional robots can work with. So there are multiple applications of this across different industries. When you just look across at a few of them here, we've just got just a couple. Jim certainly talked about some of these earlier as well in terms of some of the opportunities. But when you start thinking about how you can apply AI against this, it really starts opening up what you can do with these opportunities. So think about something like medical claims or pricing optimizations, or know your customer processes within banking around things like identification, and trying to read a document like a ID card, a driver's license or something like that, match it against something that is pulled out of a utility bill to go and prove your location of residency. Now this starts to become something that's integral as part of a traditional KYC process, and that's something that you can start to do using AI. So when we look at this again from a product lens, I think Param has showed these pillars as well, and we do think about AI laced throughout all parts of the UiPath platform, from the discover pillar around things like process mining or task mining, to the build pillar with things like computer vision and document understanding, of course to the manage pillar with things like insights or AI center, and then finally to the engage pillar with things like action center or chatbots for conversational AI. All of this running around our attended and unattended robots. What we'll do today is dive into two of these and go a little bit deeper than what you heard before. And we'll really look at document understanding within the build pillar, and then we'll look at AI center within the manage pillar in terms of how you can use and manage these models using the UiPath platform really to go and host all of this. Okay. So let's dive a little bit into document understanding now, and let's start there. So first off, what is document understanding? What is this when we mention this? For us, document understanding is really about being able to extract and interpret information from a wide range of documents. This really, for us, sits at the intersection of what we traditionally think about as RPA, document processing, and artificial intelligence. Document understanding as a product area really starts to bring these pieces together. And this takes it far beyond traditional OCR or traditional computer vision. It's really not just OCR and it's not just computer vision. And I think as you get into this, you'll see what I mean by that. So what does this actually mean? Well, for us, this actually means that you actually have quite a few different use cases that you can begin to address with document understanding. Think about things like checkboxes or handling different types of documents, varying quality, of varying formats of text and signatures and all of this. This starts to become something that's possible to do with document understanding. Now, Param talked about this a little bit earlier as well, but just to click a little bit into this, for us, document understanding really starts at the base framework level. And the reason we start with this framework is because this is an open and extensible framework where you can start to use any number of capabilities that we ship out of the box. For example, we have multiple different OCR engines that you can pick from, including ones developed by UiPath or ones developed by some of our technology partners. And even with things like extraction, you have multiple extraction methods. Part of the power of this framework is we allow you to do things like mix and match different extraction methods all the way down to the granular field level. So if you have one specific field for one document type that can be well defined using something very simple, like it's a fixed location on the document, or it's always in a certain format, then you can use a simple rules-based method to go and extract that piece of information. On the other hand, you may have other fields within that document that may rely on more of a machine learning based approach because, for example, maybe that information varies from document to document. The way that it shows up varies, the way it's labeled varies. And so now you really need to apply more AI technology to go in and be able to consistently identify that information. Well, with the framework and with this open and extensible framework, we allow you to mix and match different methods. And so you can use something like a machine learning based extraction method, for example, one of our pre-trained models or something that you customize yourself, and even mix that in with various rules-based methods, which we also make available as well. Of course, you can also then mix UiPath technology with partner technology if you wanted to, and you have the flexibility to do all of that. So lots of things that we can start to do with this framework. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, if you look at one of our customers who have recently implemented document understanding, look at Thermo Fisher. So Thermo Fisher is a very large company with over 80,000 employees spread across the world and over 30 billion in revenue. And what they wanted to do was actually they identified procure to pay invoice processing as one of the processes that would be a good candidate for automation. Now, they went ahead and implemented this fairly quickly in about 12 weeks. And even for this first phase, they were able to yield 70% time savings by implementing document understanding and using the framework and the power of that framework itself. Even in this first phase, with this first implementation, they were able to achieve over 50% of straight-through processing on their invoices with zero-touch human involvement. Now, as they continue to progress and as this model continues to learn off of their human involvement, this is something that we would expect those rates to continue to improve over time as well. And clearly this for Thermo Fisher has been a massive success even from the initial implementation and allow them to achieve significant value right from the get-go. So you can start to see how document understanding can come together and really help enhance what the robots are able to do and yield real business benefits for our customers here. So, again, zooming back out, looking at some of the other success that some other customers have had, you can see Evros yielded similar types of savings, in this case, 80% time savings on invoice processing. Another of our customers, this is a major investment bank, actually focused a little bit more around something other than time savings. They actually really focused on something like error reduction. And sometimes it's easy to overlook the fact that robots actually help you in multiple different ways. Automation can certainly help with things like time savings or reduction of the tasks, but it can also help with having the tasks be completed more consistently. And in this case, a 90% reduction in errors actually yielded an annual savings of well over $1 million right? And so that can be something that can be extremely important and could be the major driver for your business case for that automation. We had another retailer actually achieve a 93% straight-through processing rate, so even higher than what we just saw with Thermo Fisher, with a significantly higher confidence score associated with that as well. So again, you start to see the range of possibilities of what can be done and the type of success customers have had when using our technology. So now let's actually click over and look a little bit more at AI Center. And so we've talked about one application that sits on top of AI Center, and that was document understanding. Think about that as, really going processing your documents. Now let's look at AI Center, which for us is really this machine learning operations platform where the models, such as document understanding models, can really sit inside this. Now AI Center is unique because you actually have a range of different abilities that you can use for your models. You can pick from any number of pre-trained models developed by UiPath. Those, some of the models from document understanding are just one example of that. You can also use partner models, or of course you can bring your own model as well. So if you have a data science team and they're developing their own models, you can upload those into AI Center. And now the benefit is you can now start to use RPA as a means of consuming your models, right? And so if you think about the traditional gap, I think we've seen statistics out there that say something like, vast majority of AI initiatives actually never make it to production. Something like 16% of the AI models developed actually will make it to production. And so with AI Center, the power of AI Center is by having this machine learning platform directly integrated into your RPA platform, RPA itself becomes a vehicle for you to quickly productize what you can go do with your machine learning models. And just looking into this a little bit, you can see how AI Center starts with this foundation around machine learning model deployment, model management, data set management associated with those models, even doing things like running evaluation or training pipelines on those models. Of course, having that human in the loop component so your models can continuously learn and be retrained. And then on top of that, we have capabilities that we then layer on top of that. We talked about how you can bring your own models into this so that AI Center really becomes a platform for you to host and manage your models. We also have over 25 models that we've integrated out of the box. We'll go into a little bit more detail on that in a second. And then we also have AI solution templates. This is our newest area that we've been investing in to really give you a recipe, more of a starting guide to quickly have an AI solution that you can then deploy and start to realize value from. Let's go into some of these models here. So, we talked about how we have over 25 models integrated out of the box. And you can see some of the types of models that we have here. Even going back to document understanding, you can see that we have models available for a number of different common document types, from things like various invoice types, including Japanese invoices or Chinese invoices, through to something like contracts or ID cards, remittance advice, delivery notes, even some common forms that we're hearing a lot of requests for from some of our customers, like W-2s and W-9s. These are ones that are pre-trained out of the box already with tens of thousands of samples, or you can take any of these and you can customize that for your needs. And that can be, tailoring the accuracy and fine-tuning the model accuracy for the type of data that you see in production. Could be adding or removing fields that the model knows how to handle, right? On top of that, we have these groups of additional out-of-the-box models as well. These are more almost like underlying machine learning components that you can now start to assemble using your RPA workflow as your, as your assembly engine. And this is around things like language analysis or language comprehension, image analysis, tabular analysis. You can see some of the types of capabilities that we give you out of the box that you can start to use. Quite a bit here that you can really start to build off of, and you can start to imagine some of the ways that you can start to put this together in interesting ways. Now let's talk a little bit about one of our newer areas as well, which is really around AI solution templates. And when we look into this, the first one we're starting with is email AI solution templates. So what this does is it really helps you build an AI solution really focused around smart email processing. This will help you detect and identify different types of emails, how to route it properly, extract relevant information from it, really discover additional information from that, especially around sentiment or needs, and then be able to demonstrate the value of this automation on an insights dashboard, right? So how does this work? Well, it really takes a lot of those components that we talked about earlier, especially some of those pre-trained models. And what this does is it almost gives you like a recipe for how to go and bring these together more easily. So, if any of you through the course of the pandemic have started to experiment more with cooking at home, imagine something like a brew apron, where you actually have you have the recipes, you have some of the raw ingredients. This gives you a head start on how to bring that together, and allows you to then, kind of customize the flavor and customize that last bit of it for your particular needs. So you start with something like, various ML models within AI Center, sentiment analysis, named entity recognition models, semantic similarity, text classification, all of this. You start to bring this together. We give you the sample data sets, we give you a sample workflow that you can run directly inside UiPath RPA. And then we give you a standard analytics dashboard that shows you what this automation is actually doing for you. Gives you a sense of how much it's able to automate, gives you how much is going to humans, what it's been able to process, all of that, some of the key statistics. And then, of course, you have the human in the loop element through Action Center to allow you to have the models continue to learn and train over time. And so this is something that can be, extremely beneficial to customers. And you can imagine, especially in sectors like banking or insurance, they get, hundreds of thousands of emails that they have to process each year. And with something like an email AI solution, you have the ability to go and automate a good deal of that. And this can yield significant business benefit and operational benefit to these companies. Now let's look at one use case of a company putting AI Center into production and give you a sense of what can be done. So this is an interesting use case because if you think about how this process traditionally happens, you really go at multiple levels, right? And if you think about it from how you might outline your automation roadmap, you start with something that has been identified as an extremely manual, human-based process, highly inefficient, prone to error, with high costs associated with those errors. And you start to layer on, well, maybe there's some things that you can do just using robots alone. For example, just routing the labels effectively to the right people to review so that, not everything is going to every person. And that yields some level of business benefit. But really, to unlock the full business benefit, you have to take it all the way up to the next layer and really start to bring in AI capabilities on top of this. So for example, in this case, you had Pepsi that actually has product labels that need to be often modified for local branding, local guidelines. And so you have all this content and you have these labels that are created, and you need a way to go and quickly verify that these have been created correctly, that the information contained with them is correct. You can see this Mountain Dew label, in this particular case says it has 770 calories on it. I sure hope that's an error. In this case, obviously it is an error. And so these are the things that need to be caught early on in review. And so you can imagine humans doing this, very prone to error and very manual, but this could be a perfect application for something like computer vision to go in and look at this, read the labels, and then verify whether or not this is actually correct. So in fact, this is actually what we were able to do using AI Center, is we were able to go in and take a look at the various labels, do a comparison, be able to look actually at the information, and map that information that we were able to read from the labels using computer vision and map it against an official product record on what those attributes are supposed to be. So think of this as the ground source of truth. This is what it should say, and here's actually what it said. And so this way you can actually use AI to go and identify where you have errors, where you have omissions, where information is wrong, and then very quickly flag that so that it can be corrected before it goes out to the market and becomes a very expensive error at that point. So this just gives you one idea of what can be done once you really start thinking about harnessing the power of AI inside your RPA automations. So really, when we step back and look at this, the takeaway from all this is that with something like AI Center and with the application of machine learning models and AI technology, you really start to be able to broaden the types of processes that you can go after from an automation perspective. You can start to see some examples here of how AI is something that executives are thinking about. They're top of mind. Whether or not they can actually bridge the gap between something that their data science teams create and something that actually makes it into production is obviously challenging and continues to be a challenge, and customers really receiving the full benefits of what AI can promise to do. And so you can see how something like AI Center and this practical AI approach that UiPath takes can really help you bridge that gap. So, Ron, I think we're just about done here. I'll get ready to hand it back to you. Right before I do so, I'd say You can learn more by going to some of the links here, going to some of the websites, subscribing to our blog to read up on the latest thinking that we're doing. And of course, you can also sign up at uipath.com for an account, free account, and you can also sign up and upgrade that to an enterprise trial and go ahead and start to try and play around with some of this technology yourself and see what it can do for your automation and for your enterprise.